I want to start with something familiar. I'm absolutely addicted to TikTok and Instagram Reels. I love watching them, I love receiving them, and I love just sharing them with my friends. Social media works precisely because it meets us where we are. Awake at night, bored, curious. It makes information feel relatable, shared, and can also make us feel part of a social construct, a pack, if you will. And that brings me to something I've noticed repeatedly while sitting in on clinical consultations. A patient comes in and says, I think I know what this is. I've been seeing videos about it for a while now. I know the expected treatment. I just need you to write a procedure or just give a prescription. They're not dismissive. They're not anti-medicine. They're prepared, or at least they feel they are. And that moment captures the shift I want to talk about today. For most of medical history, our issue was a lack of information. Patients came to clinicians to gain access to knowledge. Today, it's the opposite. We're living through an epistemic surplus, more information than a reasonable person can process. However, the surplus isn't neutral. What rises to the top isn't always accuracy. TikTok doesn't wait to see you in 3 months. It sees you now. At 11 p.m., in the middle of a symptom spiral between reassurance and fear. In the UK, 1/3 of young adults now use social media as a primary source of health information. For many, platforms like TikTok are consulted before a GP appointment is even booked. To understand why this matters, we need to talk about psychology. Humans are wired to trust the most familiar source, not always the most accurate. Psychologists call this relatability bias. So when we're uncertain or anxious, we default to people who feel like us, peers, storytellers, lived experiences, and influencers understand this intuitively. They speak from bedrooms, not clinics. They narrate journeys and absolutes, not probabilities. They say, this is what happened to me, or this is what no one told me. So doctors, who are often rushed and trying to use all the empathic skills they were taught at medical school and throughout their career, does not pale in comparison to the influencer who's been with you on the same journey for many months. So when the appointment does roll around, people haven't just waited, they've prepared. They've learnt, interpreted, rehearsed, and often decided. And this helps us explain something clinicians are repeatedly noticing. Patients come in and they say they've already drawn conclusions. There's another shift that's happening, and it's subtle. Medical language has escaped the clinic. Words like cortisol, inflammation, dopamine are everywhere, and they're often stripped of uncertainty. So when more patients, again, arrive at clinics, they've drawn conclusions. Studies have shown that repeated exposure to conflicting information can increase patients' self-doubt, confusion, and anxiety. At this point, it's worth being clear about something. It isn't just about patients believing the wrong thing. There are real consequences to how misinformation spreads. Independent reviewers looking at influencer posts show that the vast majority neglect to tell the downsides, the false positives, the additional anxiety, the unnecessary interventions and tests. So what can we do? After all this, what can we do? Some health systems are beginning to reframe the problem. In countries like Canada, health misinformation is being treated as an infectious disease. You don't treat the disease by treating the final patient. You survey, you build resistance, you treat early. At the same time, clinicians are also adapting. Many clinicians are taking to Instagram and posting themselves, not to become influencers, but because silence is no longer neutral. They're also, when it comes to appointments, they're also having to adapt how these are carried out. It isn't just about refining a diagnosis. It's about a decontamination of the psychological residue of misinformation. So here's the rethink. Clinical excellence is no longer the differentiator. It is the entrance fee. The clinicians of the next decade will have to be ones that are collaborative and able to navigate through these issues. They're able to sit down with a patient and say, let's talk this through, or how did you arrive at this conclusion? Not dismissive, not dominant. And the other issue is the algorithm isn't going away. And honestly, I don't want it to. The future of medicine won't be decided by who's got the loudest voice. It was by who's earned the trust after the scrolling stops. Thank you.